The alarm bells rang through Luna Station like angry wasps. Commander Jake Morrison rolled out of his bunk and grabbed his uniform jacket. 3 months on the night shift at Earth's outer communication post, and this was the first time the emergency beacon had gone off. "What do we have, Kelly?" Jake asked as he rushed into the control room. Lieutenant Kelly Grant looked up from her screens with wide eyes. "Sir, we're getting a transmission from way outside our sector. The signal isn't strange, it's using old Galactic Medical Council protocols." Jake frowned. The Medical Council hadn't contacted Earth in over 2 years, not since the trade wars. With the Krex Empire had made everything political. "Put it on speaker." The voice that filled the room was not human. It sounded like wind blowing through crystal caves with words that seemed to shake and tremble. The universal translator worked slowly, changing the alien sounds into broken English. "Greetings to the humans of Earth. This is High Counselor Vestan of the Zilani people. We ask for help. The Grey Death has come to our worlds. Billions are dying. We have heard of your healing skills. Please send us one of your most skilled healers. Time runs short. Our children are dying. Please help us." The message repeated 3 times, then went silent. Jake stared at the speakers for a long moment. The Zilani were known across the galaxy as peaceful traders and artists. They had never asked for military help from anyone. "Kelly, get me a direct line to Earth Defense Command, Priority 1. Already on it, sir." Within an hour, Jake found himself on a video call with some of the most powerful people in human space. Admiral Lisa Hayes sat at the head of the table on Earth, her gray hair pulled back tight and her face serious. Around the table sat generals, intelligence officers, and medical experts. "The message seems straightforward," said Dr. Amy Carter, Earth's top disease expert. "A plague is killing their people. They want medical help. I can be ready to leave in 12 hours. Admiral Hayes shook her head. "Nothing is straightforward anymore, Doctor. Our intelligence says the Krex Empire has been moving ships near Zilani space. This could be a trap." General Bob Murphy leaned forward. "The Krex have wanted to get their hands on a human battle group for months. What better way than to make us think we're on a rescue mission?" Dr. Carter looked frustrated. "These are people dying from disease, billions of them. We can't ignore that because we're worried about politics." "We're not ignoring it," Admiral Hayes said calmly. "But we're also not walking into a trap with our eyes closed. If we're sending you into dangerous space, Doctor, you're going with proper protection." Jake watched the argument go back and forth for another hour. Finally, Admiral Hayes made her decision. "We'll send Battle Group Mercy, the USS Defiant, as flagship, with escorts USS Thunder and USS Lightning, plus the medical ship USS Healing Hand with full facilities." Dr. Carter looked shocked. "Admiral, they asked for 1 doctor, not a war fleet. Doctor, they're getting our best medical expert, 200 medical specialists and enough firepower to keep them all alive. The Krex Empire has been conquering peaceful worlds for 5 years. I won't let them add you to their collection." The orders went out within hours. Captain Steve Walsh, commander of the USS Defiant, received his mission briefing while his ship was still docked at Mars Station. The Defiant was one of Earth's newest destroyers, built for deep space operations against the Krex. "Medical mission, sir?" asked his second-in-command, Lieutenant Commander Paul Jackson. "The Defiant isn't exactly built for mercy runs." Captain Walsh studied the star charts. "Maybe not, but if the Krex are involved, we'll need every gun we can get. The Zilani homeworld is only 6 jumps from Krex space, too close for comfort." Down in the medical bay of the USS Healing Hand, Dr. Carter packed her equipment with help from her research team. She had worked with alien diseases before, but never anything called the Grey Death. The name alone made her worry. "Doctor," asked her assistant, Dr. Mark Collins, "do you really think the Krex are behind this plague?" Amy Carter sealed another case of medical supplies. "I don't know, Mark, but if they are, then this disease might be engineered. That means it could be designed to resist normal treatments. And if it's not the Krex? If this really is just a natural plague that needs our help?" Dr. Carter paused in her packing. "Then we save as many lives as we can. That's what doctors do. On the USS Defiant, Marine Colonel Dan Peterson briefed his officers. 2,000 Marines would be going on this mission, all armed for combat operations. "Sir?" asked Major Tony. "Ross, are we expecting ground combat?" The briefing mentioned medical assistance. Colonel Peterson looked at the tactical displays showing Krek's ship movements. "Major, when the Krek's Empire is in the neighborhood, we always expect combat. The Marines will provide security for the medical teams and be ready for anything else." Launch came 48 hours after the Zilani message. Battle Group Mercy left Earth orbit in a blaze of engine fire. The USS Defiant led the way, its weapons powered down but ready. The escort ships USS Thunder and USS Lightning took flanking positions, while the medical ship USS Healing Hand stayed protected in the center of the formation. Admiral Hayes watched from Earth Command as the ships disappeared into hyperspace. "God help us," she said quietly. "I hope we're doing the right thing." The hyperspace jump to Zilani space would take 3 days. Dr. Carter spent the time studying everything known about Zilani biology and possible diseases. The more she read, the more worried she became. The Zilani had very strong immune systems. For a disease to kill billions of them, it had to be something very powerful. Captain Walsh spent the time drilling his crew on combat procedures. If this was a trap, they would be ready. The USS Defiant had faced Krek's ships before and won. But they had never been this far from home, with medical personnel to protect. On the 3rd day, the ships dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Corvana system. What they found made everyone stop and stare. The beautiful blue-green world of the Zilani looked sick. The crystal cities that usually sparkled like jewels were dim and dark. Emergency signals filled every radio frequency. "My God," whispered Dr. Carter as she looked at the planet on the main screen. "How many people live down there?" 12 billion, Captain Walsh answered grimly. "Or at least they used to." The communication officer looked up from his station. "Sir, we're getting signals from the planet. They're asking who we are and why we brought warships." Captain Walsh looked at the 3 destroyers around him and suddenly understood the problem. They had come to help, but to the dying people below, they looked like an invasion force. "Open a channel," he ordered. "Time to find out if we came to save people or fight a war." The crystal towers of Corvana looked like they were crying. Dr. Amy Carter pressed her face to the transport shuttle window and watched the once bright city pass below. What should have been gleaming spires of colored light were now dark and cracked. Emergency vehicles moved through empty streets like lost insects. "Not what I expected," said Marine Sergeant Beth Turner, checking her rifle for the 3rd time. "Place looks like a ghost town," Captain Steve Walsh's voice crackled over the shuttle radio. "All teams, remember we're here to help. Keep weapons ready but not visible unless absolutely necessary." The shuttle landed at the main medical research center, a building that looked like it was carved from a single giant crystal. As the ramp lowered, Dr. Carter got her first look at the Zilani people she had come to save. They were tall and thin, with skin that looked almost transparent in the dim light. Their faces were long and narrow, with large eyes that seemed to hold all the sadness in the universe. A group of them waited near the landing pad, but they stayed far back when they saw the armed Marines walking down the ramp. High Counselor Vestan stepped forward slowly. When he spoke, his voice sounded like music played on broken instruments. We asked for a healer. Why do you bring soldiers?" Dr. Carter moved to the front of the group, her medical bag in hand. "I'm Dr. Amy Carter. I'm here to help with the plague. These Marines are just here to keep everyone safe." The Zilani leader's large eyes looked at the Marines, then at the warships visible in the sky above. "Safe from what? We are dying people. We have no weapons. We have no armies. Why do you need so many guns to heal us?" Colonel Dan Peterson stepped up beside Dr. Carter. His combat armor made him look twice as big as the thin Zilani. "Sir, we've had reports of hostile activity in this sector. We're just being careful." "Hostile activity?" Vextan's voice rose higher, sounding almost like singing. "The only hostile activity here is the Grey Death killing our children. And now you bring more weapons to our world." Dr. Carter looked around at the scene and realized how wrong this all looked. She was a doctor surrounded by soldiers, standing in front of a people who were dying and afraid. Counselor Vestan, please. Let me see your medical facilities. Let me help your people. The Marines will stay out of the way. But even as she spoke, more shuttles were landing. Marines poured out and immediately began setting up defensive positions around the medical center. Colonel Peterson spoke into his radio, calling for more troops to secure the area. Within an hour, what was supposed to be a medical mission looked like a military occupation. Marine guards stood at every entrance. Armored vehicles patrolled the streets around the medical center. Scanner arrays went up to watch for threats from space. The Zilani people watched all this with growing fear. Crowds began to gather in the nearby streets not to welcome their helpers, but to ask why Earth had sent an army to their dying world. Inside the medical center, Dr. Carter tried to focus on her work. Chief Healer Morvex, the Zilani's top medical expert, showed her the plague samples, but even she seemed nervous with armed Marines standing guard outside the laboratory. "Your soldiers," Morvex said quietly, her voice like wind through leaves. "They frighten our people. We have never seen weapons in a hospital before." "I'm sorry about that," Dr. Carter said, studying a sample of the gray death under the microscope. "But these are dangerous times. There are people who might want to stop us from helping you." "What people? Who would want to stop healing?" Dr. Carter looked up from the microscope. She didn't want to explain about the Krex Empire and their wars with Earth. The Zilani seemed too gentle to understand that kind of violence. Bad people, people who don't want peace. But outside the medical center, the situation was getting worse. News crews from across Zilani space arrived to film the human ships and soldiers. The images they broadcast made Earth's mission look very different from what it was supposed to be. On the USS Defiant, Captain Walsh watched the news reports with growing worry. The headlines all said the same thing: human war fleet invades plague world. Earth sends army instead of doctors. Are humans here to help or conquer? "Sir," said Lieutenant Commander Paul Jackson, "maybe we should pull back the Marines. Let the medical teams work without so much security." Captain Walsh shook his head. "Negative. Long-range sensors are picking up ship movements at the edge of the system. Could be Krex scouts. We're staying at full alert." He was right about the ship movements, but wrong about what they meant. The ships belonged to 3 other species: the Thalan, the Morvex, and the Quintari. They weren't coming to attack anyone. They were coming because they were worried about what Earth was doing. The Thalan ship captain, Kex Lin, sent a message to all the human ships. "We are concerned about your military presence at Corvana." The Zilani people asked for medical help, not occupation. "Please explain your intentions." Similar messages came from the Morvex and Quintari ships. Within hours, Battle Group Mercy found itself surrounded by alien vessels, all demanding to know why Earth had sent warships to answer a medical emergency. On the planet below, the protests were getting larger. Thousands of sick and dying Zilani gathered outside the medical center demanding answers. Why had their call for help brought soldiers instead of healers? Why were human Marines pointing weapons at plague victims? Sergeant Turner found herself standing guard at the main gate, watching the crowd grow bigger and more upset. The Zilani didn't look angry in a human way. They looked sad and confused, which somehow felt worse. "Sarge," said Private Joe Martinez, "I don't like this. These people aren't enemies, they're just scared." "I know, Martinez. But our orders are to keep the medical team safe. That means keeping everyone else out." A young Zilani, barely more than a child, approached the gate. Her transparent skin was marked with gray spots, signs of the plague. She held up a small flower made of crystal and tried to give it to Sergeant Turner. "For the healer," she said in broken English. "To say thank you for coming." Sergeant Turner looked at the flower, then at the child's trusting eyes. Behind her, she could hear Dr. Carter working to save lives. Around her, she could see Marines with weapons ready to fight. Something was very wrong with this picture. "Thank you," she said, taking the flower. "The healer will like this very much." But even as she spoke, more human ships were arriving in orbit. Admiral Hayes, watching from Earth, had decided that Battle Group Mercy needed more support. The USS Warrior and USS Guardian, 2 more destroyers, dropped out of hyperspace and took defensive positions. To the watching alien ships, It looked like Earth was building up forces for an attack. To the Zilani people on the planet, it looked like the humans were planning to stay forever. To the Marines on the ground, it looked like they were surrounded by potential enemies. Dr. Carter, working alone in her laboratory while the political crisis grew around her, made her first important discovery. The Gray Death wasn't natural. Someone had made it in a laboratory. Someone had designed it to kill peaceful people. But when she tried to call Captain Walsh with the news, she found that all communications were being jammed by ships at the edge of the system. Ships that weren't Thalan, Morvex, or Quintari. Ships that belonged to the Krex Empire. The trap was closing, but not in the way anyone expected. Earth had come to help and looked like invaders. The aliens had come to watch and looked like threats. And the real enemy waited in the dark, watching everyone make exactly the mistakes they had planned for. The crystal flower lay broken on the ground where Sergeant Beth Turner had dropped it. The young Zilani girl who had given it to her was now running away with the rest of the crowd, crying in fear. It had happened so fast. One moment, the Zilani protesters were standing peacefully outside the medical center. The next moment, they were running in panic as Marine vehicles roared up the street with their sirens blaring. All units, we have a security breach at the North Gate. Colonel Dan Peterson's voice cracked over the radio. Possible hostile infiltration. Lock down everything. But there was no hostile infiltration. A group of 6 Zilani children had simply tried to visit the medical center to see the human doctors. The Marines, following their training, had treated them like enemy soldiers. Dr. Amy Carter ran outside when she heard the commotion. She found Sergeant Turner standing by the gate looking at the broken flower with a sick expression on her face. "What happened here?" Dr. Carter demanded. "False alarm, Doc," Turner said quietly. "Some kids got too close to the perimeter. We scared them off." Dr. Carter looked at the scattered crystal pieces. Each one had been carefully carved by hand. It must have taken hours to make. "They were bringing gifts, weren't they?" "Yes, ma'am." "I think they were." The news cameras caught it all. Within minutes, video of armed human Marines scaring away sick alien children was broadcast across the galaxy. The images looked even worse than they were. To people who didn't understand the context, it looked like Earth soldiers were threatening dying kids with weapons. In the medical laboratory, Chief Healer Morvex watched the news reports with growing horror. "Is this why you came?" she asked Dr. Carter. "To frighten our children?" "No," Dr. Carter said firmly. "We came to heal your people. These soldiers are they're trying to protect us." "From what? From sick children bringing flowers?" Dr. Carter didn't have a good answer. She turned back to her microscope and the Gray Death samples, trying to ignore the chaos outside. But her concentration was broken when alarms started going off throughout the facility. Captain Steve Walsh's voice came over the emergency speakers. "All personnel prepare for possible combat. Unknown ships are approaching the system." The unknown ships belong to the Galactic Medical Council. 3 vessels carrying doctors and medical supplies from across the galaxy, coming to help with the plague crisis. But to the humans watching, their sensors, they looked like more potential enemies. "Sir," Lieutenant Commander Paul Jackson reported from the USS Defiant. "We now have ships from 6 different species in this system. All of them are asking why we brought a war fleet to a medical emergency." Captain Walsh stared at the tactical display. His 3 destroyers were completely surrounded by alien vessels. None of them had fired a shot, but all of them had weapons ready. "How did this happen, Paul? We came to help people." "I think that's the problem, sir. We came to help people the way humans help people, with lots of guns and plenty of backup. These aliens don't understand that. On the planet below, the situation was getting worse by the hour. More protesters gathered outside the medical center, but now they weren't just sick people asking for help. They were angry citizens demanding that the human army leave their world. Zilani Defense Coordinator Kex Lin, the closest thing the peaceful species had to a military leader, sent an official message to Colonel Peterson. "Remove your weapons from our medical facilities immediately. You are creating panic among sick and dying people." Colonel Peterson read the message and felt trapped. His orders were to protect the medical mission at all costs. but every action he took to provide security made the aliens more afraid and angry. "Sir," Major Tony Ross asked, "maybe we should pull the Marines back to the ships? Let the doctors work without visible security?" "Negative," Peterson replied. "Intelligence still shows enemy ship movement at the system edge. Could be Kreks preparing for an attack. We stay put." But the ships at the edge of the system weren't preparing to attack the humans. They were preparing to attack everyone. War Commander Thex Krull of the Kreks Empire watched the chaos from his flagship, hidden behind a small moon. Everything was going exactly as planned. The humans had walked into his trap perfectly, bringing weapons to a medical mission and making themselves look like invaders. "Status report," he ordered his tactical officer. "Sir, the humans are now completely surrounded by ships from 6 species. All of them are demanding explanations. The planet below is in chaos. The trap is working perfectly." Thex Krull smiled with too many teeth. "Excellent. How long before the humans are forced to fight or surrender?" "At current escalation rates, less than 10 hours, sir." In her laboratory, Dr. Carter made a discovery that changed everything. Deep in the genetic code of the Grey Death, she found something that shouldn't exist in a natural disease. Artificial markers. Someone had built this plague in a laboratory and designed it very carefully. But there was something else. Something that made her blood run cold. The disease wasn't just engineered to kill Zilani. It was engineered to get worse when humans were around. "Chief Healer Morvex," she called out. "I need to ask you something important. When did the plague start getting worse? What day exactly?" The Zilani scientist thought for a moment. 3 days ago, right around the time your ships arrived in the system." "Why do you ask?" Dr. Carter stared at the genetic data on her screen. The plague was designed to respond to human pheromones and biological signatures. The more humans in the area, the faster it spread and the more people died. Someone had created a bioweapon specifically designed to make it look like humans caused the plague to get worse. It was the perfect trap. Earth would send medical help. The plague would get worse and everyone would blame the humans. She tried to contact Captain Walsh with her discovery, but found that all communications were being jammed. Not by the alien ships surrounding them, but by something else. Something hiding at the edge of the system. Meanwhile, the political crisis reached a breaking point. The Thalan Captain Vexmore sent an ultimatum to Battle Group Mercy. "You have 1 hour to withdraw all military forces from Corvana, or we will consider you an occupying army and act accordingly." Similar messages came from the other alien fleets. Earth's attempt to help had turned into a standoff that could start the biggest war in galactic history. On the ground, Sergeant Turner made a decision that would change everything. She walked out of the marine perimeter and approached the crowd of Zilani protesters. In her hands, she carried the pieces of the broken crystal flower. "I'm sorry," she said to the crowd, her voice carrying over their translator devices. "We came here to help, but we've only made things worse. We're not your enemies. We're just scared and stupid." The crowd went quiet. A human soldier was apologizing to them. It was something none of them had ever seen before. An old Zilani male stepped forward. His skin was gray with plague marks, but his eyes were kind. "Why, are you afraid, young soldier? We have no weapons, we fight no wars." "Because that's what humans do," Turner said honestly. "When we care about something, we protect it with guns and ships and walls. We don't know how to help without fighting." The old Zilani looked at the broken flower pieces in her hands. "Perhaps," he said softly, "it is time for both our species to learn new ways. But learning new ways would have to wait." At the edge of the system, War Commander Thex Krull gave the order his species had been waiting for. "Begin the attack. Target all ships equally. Make it look like chaos. When the shooting stops, there will be no witnesses left to tell the truth." The Kreks Empire was done waiting for their enemies to destroy each other. It was time to finish what the plague had started. The first Kreks missile hit the Thalan medical ship without warning. The explosion lit up space like a deadly flower, and pieces of the alien vessel scattered across the void. On every ship in the system, alarms began screaming at once. Captain Steve Walsh gripped his command chair as the USS Defiant shook from a near miss. All hands battle stations. Jackson, get me a target. Sir, the attack is coming from the edge of the system, Lieutenant Commander Paul Jackson shouted over the noise. Multiple Krex vessels, at least 20 ships. They're firing on everyone. Us, the Thalen, the Morvex, everybody. The trap had been sprung, but not the way anyone expected. War Commander Thexkral wasn't trying to capture the human ships. He was trying to kill everyone in the system and blame the humans for starting a war. Incoming transmission from the Zalani planet. The communications officer called out. Put it on screen, Walsh ordered. High Counselor Vextan's face appeared, his large eyes wide with terror. Human Captain, the Krex ships are firing on our cities. They say you brought them here. They say this is all your fault. Captain Walsh felt his heart sink. Even now, with the real enemy attacking everyone, the aliens still blamed Earth. Counselor, we didn't bring the Krex here, we came to help your people. Then help us now, Vextan screamed as another explosion shook his transmission. They're bombing our hospitals, our medical centers, they're killing the doctors trying to save our people. The transmission cut off as a Krex bomber struck the Zalani capital city. Down on the planet, Colonel Dan Peterson watched the sky fill with fire and made the hardest decision of his military career. All Marines, new orders, we're no longer protecting just the medical facility. We're protecting the entire city. If it lives and breathes on this planet, we keep it alive. Major Tony Ross looked at his commander in shock. Sir, that's not our mission. We're supposed to guard the medical team, not fight a planetary defense war. The mission just changed, Major. Those Krex bombers are targeting hospitals and schools. I won't stand by and watch children die because of politics. The Marines poured out of their defensive positions around the medical center and spread across the city. Human soldiers took positions on rooftops, in parks, anywhere they could set up anti-aircraft guns to shoot down Krex bombers. Sergeant Beth Turner found herself crouched behind a crystal sculpture with 3 Zalani civilians, all of them trying to hide from a Krex fighter that was strafing the street. Stay down, she told them, checking her weapon. I'll try to draw its attention away from you. The old Zalani male she had spoken to earlier looked at her with confusion. You would risk your life for us? After we called you invaders? You're not invaders, Turner said, watching the sky for the fighter's return. You're people. And people are worth protecting. In space, the battle was chaos. Ships from 4 different species found themselves fighting side by side against the Krex fleet. The USS Defiant worked with Morvex cruisers to protect damaged Thalen vessels, while Quintari fighters flew alongside human interceptors. Sir, Jackson reported, the Morvex Captain Corval is requesting permission to coordinate our defensive patterns with his ships. Captain Walsh didn't hesitate. Granted, send them our tactical frequencies. If we're going to survive this, we need to work together. It was the first time in galactic history that human and alien ships had shared battle plans in real combat. The coordination was clumsy at first, but it worked. Human aggression combined with alien precision proved deadly, effective against the Krex attack. But the space battle was just a distraction. The real target was the planet below, and specifically the medical facility where Dr. Amy Carter was working. She looked up from her microscope as explosions shook the building. Through the laboratory window, she could see Krex ground troops landing in the city. They weren't here to occupy the planet, they were here to destroy all evidence of what they had done. Chief Healer Morvex, she called out, we need to evacuate. The Krex are coming for the medical facility. The Zalani scientist looked at her with sad understanding. They created the plague, didn't they? That's why they're here, to make sure no one can prove what they did. Yes, Dr. Carter said grimly, but I've already figured out how their bioweapon works. If we can transmit the data off-planet, everyone will know the truth. The communication arrays are jammed. How can we send anything? Dr. Carter looked out the window at the battle raging in the streets. Human Marines were fighting alongside Zalani civilians to protect the medical center. We broadcast on every frequency at once. Even with jamming, something will get through. The first Krex soldiers reached the medical facility just as Dr. Carter finished uploading her data to the emergency broadcast system. Colonel Peterson's Marines met them at the front entrance with everything they had. Doc, whatever you're doing, do it fast. Peterson shouted over the sound of gunfire. "We can't hold them off forever." The battle for the medical center became the most important fight of the war. If the Kreks destroyed the evidence, they could blame the entire plague on human biological warfare. If Dr. Carter's data got out, the truth would expose the Kreks Empire's crimes to the galaxy. In space, War Commander Thex Kral watched his plan falling apart. The humans weren't running away or surrendering. Instead, they were fighting harder than ever, and the other alien species were helping them. "Sir," his tactical officer reported, "our ground forces are meeting heavy resistance at the medical facility. The humans are fighting to protect it." "Then destroy the entire area," Thex Kral snarled. "Use orbital bombardment, kill everyone and everything." "Sir, that will also kill our own troops on the ground." "Acceptable losses, fire." The Kreks flagship charged its main weapon and aimed at the medical center. But before it could fire, the USS Thunder, one of the human escort ships, rammed into its side. Captain Helen Brooks had sacrificed her ship and crew to protect the people below. Her last transmission was broadcast on all frequencies. "This is Captain Brooks of the USS Thunder. The Kreks Empire created the plague that's killing innocent people. Don't let them destroy the evidence. Don't let them win." The explosion of the two ships lit up the planet's sky like a second sun, and in that light, Dr. Carter's medical data began transmitting on every possible frequency, reaching ships across the system and beyond. The truth was finally getting out. The Grey Death was a Kreks bioweapon, designed to make humans look like the cause of the plague. Earth hadn't brought war to Corvana. Earth had walked into a trap, and then fought to protect everyone caught in it. But knowing the truth, and surviving long enough to act on it, were two different things. The battle was far from over, and the Kreks Empire wasn't going to give up easily. On the ground, Sergeant Turner held her position at the medical center's north entrance, fighting beside the same Zilani civilians who had called her an invader just hours before. The old male who had spoken to her was now helping to carry wounded Marines to safety. "Strange," he said as plasma bolts flew over their heads, "how quickly enemies can become friends when they face a common threat." Turner smiled grimly as she reloaded her weapon. "Maybe that's the point. Maybe the Kreks knew that if we worked together, we'd be stronger than any of us alone. Then we must make sure they regret teaching us that lesson," the old Zilani replied. Above them, the space battle raged on, but now it had a different feeling. The ships weren't just defending themselves anymore. They were defending each other, and everyone on the planet below. Human, Zilani, Thalan, Morvex, and Quintari vessels fought as one fleet against their common enemy. It was the beginning of something that would change the galaxy forever. But first, they had to survive the next few hours. The data transmission from Dr. Amy Carter changed everything in a matter of minutes. Across the galaxy, news networks received the medical evidence that proved the Grey Death was a Kreks bioweapon. More importantly, they learned that the plague got worse when humans were present because it was designed that way. On the bridge of the Thalan cruiser Bright Star, Captain Veltoth stared at the data scrolling across his screens. "Communications officer, connect me to the human Captain Walsh immediately." The same scene was happening on ships throughout the system. Morvex commanders, Quintari fleet leaders, and even the arriving Galactic Medical Council vessels all received the evidence at once. The humans hadn't caused the plague crisis. They had walked into a trap meant to destroy them and everyone else. Captain Steve Walsh took the incoming calls one by one, watching the faces of alien commanders who had been ready to fight him just hours before. The shame and anger in their eyes was clear. "Captain Walsh," said Morvex Commander Corval, "my species owes you an apology. And more than that, we owe you our support. How can we help?" "Right now, Commander, we need to coordinate our defense," Walsh replied. "The Kreks are trying to destroy all evidence of what they've done. We can't let them succeed." Within minutes, the combined fleet was working as one unit. Thalan ships provided long-range sensor data, Morvex vessels handled tactical coordination, Quintari fighters gave close support, and human destroyers led the main attack. It was clumsy and improvised, but it was working. On the planet below, the battle for the medical center had become something extraordinary. Human Marines fought alongside Zilani civilians, protecting the building where Dr. Carter continued her work. But more than that, they were protecting the idea that different species could work together. Colonel Dan Peterson found himself in command of the strangest unit in military history. His Marines were taking orders from Zilani city planners, who knew the local terrain. Zilani volunteers were carrying ammunition for human soldiers. Everyone was working together to keep the Krex ground forces away from the medical facility. "Sir," Major Tony Ross reported, "the Zilani are saying they want to officially request Earth's military protection. They want to join the Human Alliance." Peterson looked around at the mixed human-alien defensive positions. "Tell them we'd be honored to have them. But first, let's make sure there's something left to protect." The real breakthrough came when Dr. Carter made contact with Chief Medical Officer Zex Nall of the Galactic Medical Council. The elderly Thalen had been studying plagues for over 2 centuries, and he understood immediately what Carter had discovered. "Dr. Carter," his voice came over the radio. "Your analysis is brilliant, but there's something else you need to know. We've seen this bioweapon before. The Krex have used it on 3 other worlds, always with the same pattern." "What pattern?" Carter asked, still working in her laboratory as explosions shook the building. "They create a plague that requires outside medical help. When help arrives, the plague gets worse and the helpers get blamed. Then the Krex arrive as peacekeepers to restore order. Within a year, the planet is under their control." Dr. Carter felt sick as she understood the full scope of the Krex plan. "How many people have died because of this?" "Billions, Dr. Carter. Billions." The knowledge made everyone fight harder. This wasn't just about saving Corvana or protecting Earth's reputation. This was about stopping a pattern of genocide that had been going on for years. In space, War Commander Thex Kral was facing his own crisis. Half his fleet was gone, destroyed by the combined alien forces. His ground troops were trapped on the planet. Worst of all, the truth about Krex bioweapons was spreading across the galaxy. "Sir," his communications officer reported, "we're receiving surrender demands from over 30 species. The Galactic Council is calling an emergency session. They're talking about war crimes trials." Thex Kral snarled with rage. The perfect plan was ruined, but he still had one option left. If he couldn't conquer the galaxy through tricks and bioweapons, he would do it with pure destructive force. "Set course for the planet's surface," he ordered. "We'll ram the capital city, kill everyone and destroy all the evidence. Sir, that will also kill our own troops on the ground. They failed their mission. They deserve to die with the rest." The Krex flagship, badly damaged but still deadly, began diving toward Corvana. Its massive bulk would create an explosion that would destroy the entire capital region and everyone in it. Captain Walsh saw it coming on his sensors. "All ships intercept course for the Krex flagship. We have to stop it before it reaches the planet." "Sir," Lieutenant Commander Paul Jackson said quietly, "our engines are damaged. We can't catch it in time." Walsh looked at the tactical display. The USS Defiant could reach the Krex ship, but not to stop it. Only to ram it, sacrificing his ship and crew to save the people below. He was reaching for the intercom to address his crew when another voice came over the radio. "USS Defiant, this is the Thalan cruiser Bright Star. We have the speed to intercept." "We'll handle this." "Captain Veltoth, your ship isn't built for ramming attacks," Walsh protested. "No, Captain Walsh, but it is built to save lives. That's what Thalan ships are for." The Bright Star accelerated past the human fleet, its crystal hull gleaming as it climbed toward the diving Krex vessel. Captain Veltoth's final transmission reached every ship in the system. "This is Captain Veltoth of the Thalan Starfleet. The Krex Empire has murdered billions of innocent people with their bioweapons. This ends now." The collision between the 2 ships lit up the sky like a falling star. Both vessels were destroyed instantly, but the explosion happened high in the atmosphere, far from any populated areas. War Commander Thex Kral's last desperate attack had failed. On the ground, the battle was winding down. With their commander dead and their fleet destroyed, the surviving Krex troops began surrendering to the mixed human-alien forces. It was over. Doctor. Carter emerged from her laboratory to find Colonel Peterson and Chief Healer Morvex waiting for her. Both looked exhausted, but victorious. "Doctor," Peterson said, "your data transmission worked. The whole galaxy knows what the Krex did. More importantly, they know that Earth came here to help, not to conquer." "What happens now?" Carter asked. Morvex stepped forward, her large eyes bright with hope. "Now we work together. The Galactic Medical Council is asking Earth to join as a full member. The Zilani government is requesting formal alliance with your species, and there are 12 other worlds that want Earth's protection from future Krex attacks." Dr. Carter looked out the window at human Marines helping Zilani workers repair damaged buildings. Overhead, alien and human ships flew together on patrol missions. It wasn't the medical mission she had expected to lead, but it was something better. "I think," she said slowly, "we're going to need a bigger medical fleet." Colonel Peterson smiled. "Don't worry, Doc. Something tells me that when Earth sends doctors to help people, we're always going to send them with enough protection to make sure they can do their job. And next time," added Chief Healer Morvex, "maybe we'll all understand each other a little better." The crisis that was supposed to turn the galaxy against humanity had instead brought different species together for the first time in centuries. The Krex Empire's greatest weapon, the fear and mistrust between species, had backfired completely. But this was just the beginning. Word was already spreading to other worlds under Krex control. The bioweapon attacks, the false flag operations, the genocidal plans. For the first time in decades, the Krex Empire faced united opposition, and it had all started because they asked for a doctor, and Earth sent a battle group instead. 3 months after the Battle of Corvana, Dr. Amy Carter stood in the largest medical conference room in galactic history. Representatives from 47 different species filled the crystal amphitheater, all of them working together on the biggest medical project anyone had ever attempted. "The cure distribution is ahead of schedule," she reported to the gathered scientists. "We've eliminated the Grey Death from 32 worlds so far. The bioweapon is completely neutralized." Applause filled the room, but it sounded different from human applause. Thalan delegates chimed like bells. Morvex representatives clicked their claws, and Zilani scientists made music with their voices. It was the sound of hope in dozens of different languages. Chief Healer Morvex, now Dr. Carter's co-director in the new Interspecies Medical Alliance, stood to address the group. "The success of our cure proves something important. When different species work together, we can solve problems that none of us could handle alone." Outside the medical center, the city of Corvana had been rebuilt bigger and better than before. The crystal towers now included sections built in human, Thalan, and Morvex architectural styles. It was a symbol of what cooperation could accomplish. General Dan Peterson, promoted after his actions during the battle, walked through the integrated training facility where his revolutionary idea was becoming reality. Human Marines trained alongside Zilani medics, Thalan engineers, and Morvex scouts. The first truly mixed military units in galactic history. "How's the integration going, Major Ross?" Peterson asked his second-in-command. "Better than expected, sir. Turns out humans and aliens can work together pretty well when they're not trying to kill each other." Peterson smiled as he watched a human sergeant teaching Zilani volunteers how to use medical scanners in combat situations. Nearby, a Thalan engineer was showing Marines how to repair their equipment using crystal-based technology. "It's funny," Peterson said. "We came here expecting to fight the Krex Empire. Instead, we ended up building something they never expected, a real alliance." The alliance was growing every day. The Galactic Defense Pact now included 23 species, all united against Krex expansion. More importantly, it was working. 3 Krex invasion fleets had been stopped in the past month by combined forces. On Earth, Admiral Lisa Hayes stood in the war room reading reports from across the galaxy. Every day brought new requests for help from worlds threatened by Krex, bioweapons, or invasion fleets. Every day brought new allies joining the fight. "Ma'am," her aide reported, "we're getting another request for medical assistance. The Vorthan system is reporting a plague outbreak. They specifically asked for Dr. Carter and a full protection fleet." Hayes smiled. 6 months ago, sending warships on a medical mission had seemed like a mistake. Now it was standard procedure, and it was saving lives across the galaxy. Tell them we'll have battle group healing there in 48 hours, and make sure they know we're coming to help, not to conquer. Yes, ma'am. Though I think everyone knows that now. They did know it. The story of Corvana had spread to every corner of the galaxy. Earth didn't send doctors alone into danger. Earth sent doctors with enough protection to make sure they could do their job safely. It was a very human way of thinking that was catching on with other species. Back on Corvana, Dr. Carter received a special visitor in her laboratory. Captain Steve Walsh, recovered from his injuries during the battle, had come to see how the medical work was progressing. Any regrets about that first day, Captain? Carter asked. About bringing all those warships to a medical mission? Walsh looked out the window at the mixed fleet orbiting the planet. Human destroyers flew alongside Thalan medical ships and Morvex research vessels. Not anymore, Doctor. I think we did exactly what we were supposed to do. Even though it almost started a war. It did start a war. But it was the right war, against the right enemy, with the right allies. The right allies were making all the difference. Intelligence reports showed the Krex Empire was struggling to deal with the new reality. Their bioweapon attacks no longer worked, because every species watched for the signs. Their divide-and-conquer tactics failed, because the species were united. Now, most importantly, their reputation as unstoppable conquerors was broken. The Battle of Corvana had shown that the Krex could be defeated when their enemies worked together. In his prison cell on the neutral world of Baxter Station, former Krex intelligence officer Vex Kroll was being questioned by investigators from the War Crimes Tribunal. He had been captured during the cleanup operations on Corvana and was now revealing the full scope of Krex bioweapon programs. How many worlds? Asked the Thalan prosecutor. 47 successful attacks over the past 10 years, Vex Kroll answered. Billions dead from engineered plagues. All of it designed to make the target worlds request help, then blame the helpers when the plague got worse. And it would have worked forever if you hadn't tried it on Earth. Vex Kroll made a sound that might have been laughter. We studied human psychology for years. We knew they would send military protection with their medical teams. We planned for their aggressive response. What we didn't plan for was their willingness to sacrifice themselves for strangers. The prosecutor nodded. You expected them to act like Krex. Instead, they acted like humans. The trial proceedings were broadcast across the galaxy, exposing the full horror of what the Krex Empire had been doing. World after world came forward with evidence of similar bioweapon attacks. The case against the Krex leadership grew stronger every day. On Corvana, a special ceremony was taking place at the memorial site where the Thalan ship Bright Star had crashed. Representatives from every species in the Alliance gathered to honor Captain Veltoth and his crew. Sergeant Beth Turner, now a lieutenant, stood with the honor guard as Chief Healer Morvex spoke to the crowd. Captain Veltoth and his crew gave their lives to save strangers. This is what we must remember, that different species can care for each other as much as they care for their own people. The memorial wasn't just for the Thalan crew. It honored everyone who had died during the battle. Humans, Zilani, Morvex, and Quintari alike. They had all died defending the same thing, the right of people to live free from fear and disease. As the ceremony ended, Turner found herself standing next to the old Zilani male who had helped during the battle. He was healthier now, cured of the plague that had been killing him. Lieutenant Turner, he said in his musical voice, do you think this alliance will last? Will our species stay friends when the war with the Krex is over? Turner looked around at the mixed crowds of humans and aliens all working together to rebuild the city. I think so. We've learned something important here. When we help each other, we're all stronger. And when someone asks for a doctor? Turner smiled. We'll send the doctor. But we'll also send enough ships to make sure the doctor comes home safe. It was a very human way of thinking, but it was catching on throughout the galaxy. Dr. Carter stood in her new office overlooking the memorial site, reading the latest reports from medical missions across known space. 17 different battle groups were currently providing medical aid to worlds threatened by Krek's bioweapons. Each mission included doctors, medical ships, and enough firepower to protect them all. They called it the Corvana model now. Medical aid with military protection, cooperation between species, shared defense against common threats. It was working so well that even former enemies were joining the alliance. A chime from her desk indicated an incoming message. It was from Admiral Hayes on Earth. Dr. Carter, we've received another request for medical assistance. This time it's from the Krek's border worlds. Several planets are reporting plague outbreaks and are asking for help. They claim they want to defect from the Krek's empire and join our alliance. Carter smiled as she read the message. Even Krek's worlds were learning that when you needed help, you called Earth. And when Earth answered, you got both the healing and the protection you needed. She began composing her reply. Admiral Hayes, prepare Battle Group Mercy 2. We have people to save. Outside her window, the sun was setting over Corvana, painting the crystal city in shades of gold and red. Human and alien children played together in the parks below. Medical, ships and warships flew in formation overhead. They had asked for a doctor. Earth had sent a battle group instead. And somehow, that had been exactly what the galaxy needed.